Damn!
Hello, and welcome back to the Garage Series. This is the fourth video in the series designed to deep dive into different components of tuning and explain the pros and cons of making targeted adjustments to enable you to get the most out of your car. Today we're talking about transmission tuning and gear ratios. This is a fairly easy aspect of the car to tune and test, but it has a significant impact on the overall tune. Setting the right gear ratios and proper gearing can help you maximize the car's performance, keeping it in the optimal power band, ensuring that you get the most power down to the track as possible. Gearing is a great way for you to customize your build for a specific circuit, event, or series. So for this video, our goal is to get a better understanding of how gearing works, why you'd want to adjust it, and the impact of making those changes to the overall performance of the car. A lot of the material we'll be covering today is available to you in the Beyond the Apex section of your GT7 profile. I'd highly recommend any new players review the material. It's great for providing a foundational knowledge of the game, and it's incredibly well written. It's a handy resource available anytime you want to brush up on some knowledge. So what are gear ratios? If you have a fully customizable transmission, you can adjust your transmission gear ratios. So determining the gear ratios will affect your lap times on any given course. Various stages make up the racetrack, from winding sections with consecutive corners to circuits with long straights. Changing the gear ratios will allow the engine characteristics to be used in an optimal manner for each stage of the race. So changing gear ratios involves either setting the top speed and letting the auto preset determine the individual ratios, or manually adjusting the individual ratios yourself. For this guide, we're going to talk about the things to look for when tuning the ratios. Given that gear ratios are specific to each situation, you'll have to adjust your tune based on the guidelines provided in this video. So why would you adjust the gearing? Adjusting the gear ratio allows you to get peak performance from the engine and drivetrain. For example, when dealing with a series of low to mid-speed corners, acceleration out of the corners is more important than top speed. As such, you should bring all gear ratios closer together to make the power band easier to maintain. This is known as a close ratio gear setting. On the other hand, if it's a circuit with a set of long straights, you can set the ratios for the higher gears, such as 5th and 6th, so the car will reach higher top speed. This type of gearing is referred to as wide ratio. The gear ratio of the final gear will change the overall characteristics of the transmission. Even within the same transmission, a low final gear will set up the car for more acceleration, meaning your top speed will decrease, while a high gear will raise top speed while lowering the acceleration performance. The transmission determines the amount of adjustment available. In the tuning section of the world map, you can purchase short or wide ratio transmissions. For most builds, you'll likely want to go with a fully customized transmission, as it gives you the most flexibility to adjust your car's settings to any track. There are a few exceptions. For example, if the race is limited by performance points and you're just over that peak threshold, you could opt for a pre-spec transmission or a normal transmission to shave a few points off your build. But again, this is pretty rare. For the most part, the flexibility of the fully customized transmission outweighs the negatives of the power point increase. In general, you can play with the top speed setting to get the desired effect for any given car or track. Most players won't have the need to deep dive individual gear ratios on every single build. The game actually does a pretty good job of keeping it optimal for you. So let's take a look at a real life example. On a recent tune I did for the Le Mans track, I raised the overall horsepower on the Mach 1 Mustang considerably. As a result, the car was redlining too soon on the long straights. I had to extend the gear ratios to maximize the performance of the car. Here's an example of the difference between a short and long gear ratio. Granted, this example is extreme, but it did a great job of highlighting what the impact could be on the performance of the car should you adjust gear ratios incorrectly. Overall, just adjusting the top speed on the fully customizable transmission will likely be enough to optimize your build. If you're having traction issues, that's more likely related to your LSD tuning and possible downforce. Consider gearing more about getting the engine into the optimal band to put down the power. Traction is what you need to focus on if the power is being lost by wheel spin after the ratio has been determined. So general guidelines. Initially, try changing only the final gear or top speed without changing the individual transmission gear ratios. Ideally, you want to maximize the straights on the course, so a good general guideline is to hit the red line of the car in top gear near the very end of the straightaway. You also want to consider cornering and gearing. If you find you're taking corners and the car is sluggish to accelerate out of them, even if you have the correct line and your entry and exit are smooth, you might want to consider adjusting your second or third gear ratio. If your revs are too low, your gear ratios may be too high and should be adjusted down. Be aware that your top speed is also affected by aerodynamics and engine characteristics. So just be sure to keep an eye out on your speedometer when making adjustments. If, for example, you've lost too much long speed on a straightaway, it could be that you have too much rear downforce in play. And just test continually. So gear ratios are kind of finicky. It doesn't take a lot to tune them, but it does take multiple test runs just to make sure you've got it right and you're comfortable with the changes that you've made. So run multiple sections of the same track, testing different ratios. You'll get a feel of what you prefer, and you can adjust it accordingly. Last suggestion is don't overcomplicate gearing. If you're new to tuning, just keep it at a high level and adjust the top speed. If you're experienced, by all means adjust the individual ratios. But for the most part, I've found that just adjusting the top speed takes care of 90% of the tunes I'm doing. It's pretty rare to go in and actually have to adjust individual ratios to be competitive on any given track in GT7. The final point I'll make on gear ratios is that there's been a lot of issues with the PowerPoint's measurements within GT7 around gear ratios. They've been quite often used to artificially inflate the performance rating or just general performance of the car. You should expect multiple tweaks on gear ratios. We've already seen it a few times. I've had to go back and adjust multiple tunes because the gearing of the car was changed or the weighting has changed behind the scenes in terms of the overall performance. So whatever you do here, just understand that it's going to be a bit dynamic and we're going to have to adjust as a community as changes are made to the game over time. So I hope this guide helped explain the overall purpose of the transmission and gearing and why it's important to tailor it as part of your builds. This video is going to be part of a series of videos designed to deep dive certain tuning components and their respective mechanics. Any feedback on the content and/or your own experience is welcome in the comments below. If you see value in this content and want to see more in the future, please help support my channel by liking the video and commenting below. It greatly helps with the growth of my channel here on YouTube and helps steer my content in the right direction. If you're looking to connect with others around gaming in general, feel free to join our 22 Gaming Discord. We're a growing community of like-minded mature gamers covering multiple titles. If you're looking to game with someone at any given time, 22 Gaming has got you covered. As always, thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.